Howdy, welcome to Horticulture Innovators, a podcast series where we will explore impactful innovations in horticulture. I'm Amit Dhingra, your host. I'm a professor and head of the Department of Horticultural Sciences at Texas A&M University. In each episode, we'll explore the inspiring stories of the pioneers who are contributing to sustainability, wellness, and food security through their amazing work in horticulture. Howdy.
Howdy.
Well, welcome. This is our episode 1 for the Horticulture Innovators Series podcast. We're starting because we really wanted to bring the message of what's happening in horticulture to the public. And what a great place to start. You are a senior at Washington State University in marketing and a farmer as well who grows apples and pears in Tonasket, Washington. And it's amazing that what you're doing to amplify the message of how food is grown. So first of all, congratulations. You've really broken away from the mold and done something amazing. So I just wanted to congratulate you. And thank you for visiting us in the Department of Horticultural Sciences at Texas A&M University.
Well, thank you for having me down. It's like an incredible honor. Texas A&M is a very prestigious program, especially in the horticulture side. So I'm just excited to be here. And so thank you.
So it's not just one-way dialogue. We'll have a conversation, of course, and I want to make sure you're going to ask me some questions too, because we are all focused on a common goal. Mm-hmm. We really want to be able to make sure that we have food available in the world. And we are facing a lot of challenges with extremes in weather conditions, which makes farming very difficult. We also have to make sure we have students trained. So I just wanted to start off with one very simple question, but maybe it's a loaded question. So you grow apples and pears. You're doing marketing.
Yep.
But you're an ag influencer. Why not horticulture influencer?
You bring a very good point. I am a horticulture influencer. I guess I've been a self-proclaimed ag influencer because there was already ag influencers before, so I felt like I just fell under that. But I can, since I'm more established now, honestly call myself a horticulture influencer because I am talking about horticulture and all that encompasses horticulture, which is from the science side and growing practices to just the managing side of being a horticulturist and farmer. And people have really started to know me for that.
And I bring this up because, when I was a professor at Washington State University for 15 years in the Department of Horticulture, yes, I was working with the horticulture industry, but I hadn't recognized one of the challenges is that the name horticulture is sort of disappearing from academics. More and more such departments are getting merged into plant sciences departments, whereas the horticulture industry is a very critical and important sector that is feeding a lot of people. It not only provides for subsistence or hunger, calories, but it's very important for nutrition, physical and mental health. So that's why I was wondering, do you have any ideas why we are not using the term horticulture anymore?
I mean, I'm only 21, so I don't have all the answers.
Oh, from a farmer's perspective.
But from my perspective, farmer and, Gen Z and marketing perspective, agriculture kind of has this connotation of those heroes, and you think of tractor driving in slow motion and the man working all day and feeding the country and stuff. But horticulture has so much to do with that entire scenario right there, because horticulture is ensuring that farmers can continue to become more efficient and be more sustainable as far as land management, but also sustainable as far as economics, because they're growing more profitable crops because of the work put into horticulture. Horticulture just is probably not given enough credit in that aspect. We are a generation known for just kind of generalizing and just kind of we get the gist of things and don't really worry too much about it, whereas horticulture takes a little bit more of being a little more technical and paying attention to the details. And it's just, I don't think everyone has attributed enough credit to horticulture, and so it's being used less.
And as a sort of a mission-driven influencer,
Mm-hmm.
which really distinguishes you, because your area is very specific to horticulture, but promoting all aspects thereof, the entire value chain. How do you see your role? First of all, what inspired you to get into that? And then secondly, how do you see your role in really promoting that as well?
So how did I get into it? It comes from just like a personal agenda of, this is an industry that I love and I don't want to see it die out, and I think more people should know about it. And because I see all the headlines of people, there's fear mongering that goes on in the media. There's just like enough stuff that's against us that I was like, you know what, might as well use the same platform to fight against those accusations and show that like these are real people still growing your food. Which I think a lot of people just think it's a bunch of factory farms and stuff. No, this is like the real deal, 4th generation farmer. And a lot of what I do is like I educate people, but I also show the ins and outs of like who farmers are and what we do. And, you know, there's an entire like living, breathing organization behind the food that is grown. What I love about my industry is it's so labor intensive and like there's a lot of people involved. So showing like that people don't even realize. And I think one thing is like farmers, sometimes we get used to like doing the same thing every year, same kind of, you go through the motions and you don't realize like what we're doing every day is incredible, and just highlighting the absolute detail that we put into a crop and the attention that we put into a crop to make sure it's the best possible fruit that we're producing, and just showing those little things, and consumers are just like amazed by it. So that's what I love, is just like creating that dialogue and starting conversations. And even if it is talking about something that might be a little more controversial that people are concerned about, at least I'm talking about it and not trying to sweep it under the rug.
Yeah. I do want to say that not only are you promoting horticulture, but I think you're promoting healthy eating as well, because pears and apples and fruit are really important for our health as well, of course. I wanted to get back to that term horticulture not being utilized anymore openly, because several of our grant opportunities, national grant opportunities, the term horticulture has gone away. Now we call it Specialty Crop Research Initiative, which really doesn't, well, it includes all horticulture and minor crops. But do you see, by not using the term, we're also removing the knowledge about this major discipline and major economic engine from the public, because then parents don't know that exists and they cannot advise their children, not knowing what the professions are. Like today you gave a talk in our class on professions in horticulture. You very elegantly showed what different professions exist. So where I'm going with this is, as again a mission-driven influencer in horticulture, would you be putting some effort in making sure we can get horticulture term back in our vocabulary?
Yeah, I am a huge believer in, it's like the less you talk about something, the more it loses its relevancy. And that's exactly like what happens. But it is something that, even though the term's not being used as much, horticulture is absolutely relevant and absolutely essential for any of the other terms like agriculture to even exist and continue to grow. No pun intended, but but it's important to, like, you know, generate that interest, which what I'm doing and trying to do with the younger generation. Is like, okay, there's so many cool things you can do within agriculture, and here's the name for it. It's called horticulture. If they have those specific interests, and it's not even as specific as like people are led to believe about horticulture. It's like literally learning about the like growing process and how plants work with each other and work with the environment it's put in, which is exactly what you have to look at as a farmer. Farmers get really good at knowing their land specifically and whatever crops that they're growing and how those crops interact with the land that they're using. And that's exactly where horticulturists come in and help us fine-tune exactly to know what crops to put in that specific environment.
So one of the challenges we've learned that there are only 900,000 farmers, or maybe a million farmers left in the United States trying to feed a population of 350 million. It's really wild. And what advice you might have for undergraduates or kids who are in school right now? Should they be learning horticulture? And now also, farming is not what, like you said, your fourth generation. Mm-hmm. And you very nicely said that each of the generation had its own challenges and successes and triumphs. What do you foresee as a fourth generation farmer that can attract people from different areas? Technology, what kind of upgrades are happening? Where is farming going, which really opens up opportunities for, let's say, a person who's great at programming or designing the next technology for mechanical harvesting?
Oh, man. So I always talk about like job security. There's so much job security if you get into agriculture and horticulture, like holy cow. And that can span from the technology side, because we need technology, but also know how to use technology and implement technology into growing practices, or looking into like genetics of plants, etc. But there's just so much of a need. I touched on earlier today, there's less farmers farming the same amount of land, and there is a lot more people than we've ever had. So that's just simple economics right there. That's supply and demand, and that demand and that supply are going to get a little bit scary if we don't get our butts in gear and have some people that are proactive and have passion in creating more efficiency and more sustainability as far as like the growing practices and the crops that we're actually growing. And so there's a lot of job security that comes with that. And then one thing I also talked about is you can have multiple careers within horticulture. So while you might start out on one path, because there are so many, you're working closely with a bunch of other people, you might find different interests, and you can go onto that side if you have a passion that way, but still stay within horticulture, which I think is super unique and super exciting about getting into horticulture. You're not tied down to one job position. You can explore a lot of different roles, but still stay in that realm where you're actually making a difference.
Mm-hmm. And since you have a degree in marketing, you're a farmer who farms pears and apples. What if you also had a horticulture degree? How would have that prepared you any different, or what advantage would have that given you if you had both degrees, or maybe pursue a master's in horticulture in the future? What do you think? Where can it go?
I mean, you've definitely you're influencing me on it, because I do think there's some legitimate value in me like looking at a horticulture degree or some sort of background in that, because that is how I can ultimately become a better ambassador for the industry and a better communicator. Because what I really like to do is take bigger concepts and break them down into layman terms and put some energy and creativity behind them and share them and try to generate interest from a crowd that typically would not be as interested in that topic. And it helps a lot more if I have a basis of all this knowledge that I can just pull from. The more I learn about like plants and like how just even tree fruit interacts, whether it's in the growing season or post-harvest, there's so much science behind it, and there's all these cool concepts. And I might sound like a nerd, but I can really take those concepts and generate a lot more interest from the general public. It means I have to like understand how it all works if I'm able to communicate that. So I think that's overall, it's just me personally, that's where I could benefit, is just by learning more, I'm able to communicate more. Yeah.
You know, there is a common thread between us academics and farmers. Mm-hmm. We're all lifelong learners.
Yeah.
And I think as technology is changing, what I'm seeing from my perspective is we have to integrate new knowledge every day to keep up, because our existence in universities to really support the industry, especially in a horticulture discipline. That's the case. And that kind of brings me to another question is, as a farmer, you're a farmer, you're also in the university system, but you also hear from the farming community, oh, I wish the university could do this for us or that for us. While scientists are trying to do what they're trying to do, given the constraints of resources and other aspects, but what do you think, what can the university do by preparing students in these different disciplines to serve the farmers better?
I think there should be a solid marriage of working both in a lab but also in the fields. And relationships are so huge, I think, in any sector of horticulture and agriculture, because there are people who are making decisions, and we're humans, we're communicators, and we need to learn how to like take findings and communicate that to a farmer or communicate it to the people who are implementing these findings. And then also learn how to be a good listener and listen to problems that farmers are facing. Because it's a conversation my dad and I have had a lot. He's like, there's so many smart people and they'll do all their work and they find all these cool things. But we're like, as farmers, we can't use them. Like that's not beneficial to me. That's not my problem. You just spent, 15 years of your life as a horticulture researching like woolly aphids, and we're having a huge outbreak of fire blight, and that's not what we care about right now. So that's just like, for instance, is making sure that like you're listening to what the actual problems are and constantly making that touch point and learn how to talk about your findings in a way that farmers understand.
Yeah. I think that also brings the point, we need to have people who will study woolly aphids because they will be a problem, but also, and that's the other part. If we don't have enough students training in horticulture, some of them will get employed immediately after their undergraduate. Some will go on to do their research, become professors. And, we are all, the way I look at it is, we've been given this time and space to do our work. And during that time, we have to work hard every day to replace ourselves with even smarter people.
Yes.
So that's what we are trying to do as well. And I think that's where there's a need. We need to have lots of people coming into these disciplines. And going back to the topic, if we don't have students coming in, how will we support the industry in the future?
Oh, 100%.
Machines will not completely take over things. I mean, I know artificial intelligence is there, but it's not going to go pick the fruit for you right away. But it might. Who knows what the future looks like? But at least as we understand it today.
Yes.
So.
Absolutely.
Now you can ask me, what do I think?
What do you think?
So what I think about this is, we are a land grant university, like Texas A&M, A, agriculture, M, mechanical. And the whole premise of setting up these land grant universities across the nation, when President Lincoln created these, was that we will create these educational institutions that will train the people. But times have changed. As times change, the mission changes. And I have a very good colleague at the Ohio State University, Stephen Gavazzi. He wrote a book, The Land Grant University of the Future. And I think what you said earlier, it's about relationships. We cannot operate on an island. We have to be working, listening. And actually, Land Grant University's mission is to work for our public, for our farmers, for our engineers, for sectors, manufacturing sectors, industrial sectors. So I think it's a great place, first of all, for us to be out there listening, learning. And there's a great example of this. I had an opportunity to visit with Dr. Kevin Grimes at Stanford Medical School. He initiated a program called Spark, where it's a graduate program where students get embedded in the industry for the first 2 years to identify what are the challenges that the medical technology or medical industries are facing. They identify the problem, and that becomes their dissertation. So it's very goal-oriented, very mission-oriented. And that's something which actually has inspired me to start a program here in the department. We call it the Horticulture Entrepreneurship Program. And as part of that, the idea is, why do you have to wait to become a professor to solve a problem?
True.
Why don't we bring our undergraduates face-to-face with our industries, identify their problems today, Start working on that. What that does is it creates innovation, it creates businesses. These students can become embedded and be the leaders within the industry as well and become part of that. And then I think we are fulfilling our mission as a department as well, not only providing technological solutions, but also identifying implementers.
Yeah.
And also making sure that this next generation of students also have gainful, meaningful employment as well.
I totally agree. And you're like the prime example of someone who is has taken all of your knowledge and you're able to adapt and like immerse yourself in the industry and like really figure out what like farmers want or other people in the industry, what they're wanting. And I've seen you in action. You do very well. And it's like, it's sometimes hard when you're like as brilliant as you are and like you don't even be that humble right now, but like, and then be able to communicate and really listen to what farmers wants and needs are. And we're guilty of doing the same thing as like, we as humans like to surround ourselves with who we're comfortable with. And so it's similar to that like high school lunch tables type of situation, right? It's like all the farmers, they sit together and all the horticulturists like over here and like science-based people over here. And there needs to be the mingling or it's just counterproductive. You can't just like it's just preaching to the choir constantly.
Yeah. Well, I would say that it's mutually beneficial because when I ran my program at Washington State and now as I'm setting it up here, being with farmers, well, first of all, it's my family. Mm-hmm. You know, I left everything what I knew when I was 29 when I left India, but this is my family. I mean, I work for them. I've been called, inspired to work for them and solve their problems. So I'm trained as a problem solver.
Yeah.
And the idea is that how will I find out more what their challenges are? And the big part is we recently, the industry has been very kind, both in Washington and here. I learned to pick fruit with your neighbor, Ray Schmitten. Well, not neighbor, he's close by. He taught me how to pick fruit. And actually that led to the first discovery for me because we had identified an organic compound that when sprayed, it delays the ripening of fruit. Mm-hmm. So funny thing is that the first time I was trying to pick pears, I was trying to pull them down.
Oh, of course.
And then they said, hey, no, twist and lift. But when we sprayed that compound, the fruit would not separate easily from the tree. So that was an indication that we have delayed the ripening. So had I not learned that, I would have not been sitting in my lab, would have never connected the dots.
No, that is really interesting. So, okay, so you spent a lot of time in Washington, and I think you got Washington agriculture down pretty well and horticulture up there. And now you're down in Texas, which is a different climate.
Yeah.
So what are you doing differently here? Or like what are some things that you're taking from Washington and bringing down here? What are you trying to create here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm very fortunate to helm a department of horticultural, which is horticultural sciences, which is really a long history here. And this is one of the oldest departments on campus. And E.J. Kyle, he's the one who donated the land where Kyle Field stands today for our football team. We will not talk much about that. They are going to be winning the next season completely. I know that.
Gig 'em.
Gig 'em, yes. Just like I always rooted for the Cougars.
Yes.
But the biggest thing I'm doing, the common thing I'm doing is relationships. That's where it matters, first of all. But of course, this is a much larger state, almost 4.5 times of that of Washington. And while I was in Washington, I thought, apple industry was the largest, the eating apple industry.
Yes.
It was about 2.4 billion just in Washington for apples. So when I come here, I was like, oh, wow, what would be as big as apples? But I was blown away. So Texas horticulture is almost collectively $70 billion or above per year impact, of which we have 5 sectors primarily. We've got let's start with the smallest one, which we are still figuring out the value. The latest and the newest is controlled environment horticulture, where we are trying to grow all of the crops in there like greens and berries. And I know everybody likes to call it controlled environment agriculture, but my argument is you are growing horticultural crops in there. So please, let's call it controlled environment horticulture. Same topic. If we don't use the right terminology, we will lose the relevance of that topic and discipline.
That's true.
That's the reason. So we don't know the collective value, but a lot of the major vertical farming, indoor farming companies are present in Texas because probably it's conducive for business, but also it's one of the total population of Texas is amazing. So, and more people are coming to Texas. The second sector is the fruits and vegetables. That's valued at about $12 billion total in terms of the money, the impact it has. Production is about $1 billion to $2 billion, but rest is because we are the gateway for all the produce and fruits that come from the southern part of the south of U.S., Central and Southern America.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and the third I would say is the pecans, which is, by the way, pecans are native to this area, and we also have a lot of improved varieties, but we have lots of river bottoms where there are native pecans or wild pecans, and that's just an amazing sector that's existed here for many years, and it's one of the largest producers in the country. Texas is one of the largest producers between New Mexico and Georgia. The three kind of compete each other depending on the acreage or depending on the yield that year.
Okay.
Then we come to wine industry. Did you know that Texas is becoming a major player in production of wine, high quality wines?
I thought it was just like California and Washington.
No, well, it's already number 3 in terms of number of wineries now. And of course, it's number 1 in consumption. Well, we love our wine. Yeah.
Do you contribute to that?
Well, we all do. We all do, I guess. We all do our part. But that's about $20.35 billion. So this year, those were the numbers. That the economic impact is amazing. And now, a lot of people don't think about it. There's a $38 billion gorilla. That is the ornamental and the landscape industry.
Really?
So total, we're looking at over $70 billion impact. So just learning from there, while I was in Washington, we were talking pears, apples, cherries, grapes. Here, the diversity of crops that we grow. We have 11 different growing regions and 1,300 soil types. Just as an example, we are growing over 80 different varietals of grapes in the state, which there are names I can't pronounce. We tried that yesterday, didn't I?
Yeah.
So I think this is a different place. And when I was moving from Washington, I was like, what am I going to work on? Mm-hmm. Well, I do work on grapes. I did work on grapes previously, and now I'm adding pecans to the repertoire. We're also doing trials with pears and apples in North Texas. We can grow anything here. It's the world's production center. We can grow anything.
Oh, that's incredible.
A lot of people think Texas is very hot. No, there are different regions in Texas.
Yeah. It's a huge place.
Yeah,
I mean, that's incredible. Okay. Well, that was a great answer. All right. So I do have a question for you.
Yeah.
You consider yourself a public scientist. What does that exactly mean to you?
Well, public scientist to me means, first of all, we're employed at a land-grant university, right? But as a person, it comes from a little bit of a more core set of values. Mm-hmm. I'll go into philosophy a little bit. In my entrepreneurship journey, I have often questioned what motivates people, what is their inspiration. And I found that we only know about Carl Jung and Freud principles about power, money, control, those aspects that we understand. But I think a lot of people forget there's another piece. There's this Viktor Frankl. He wrote a book on logotherapy, which is based on search for meaning, meaningful life that is based on meaning, not just that's the motivation. We are trying to find meaningful. And I think a lot of people who work in public sector, in service sector, we are all trying to find a meaning for what we do. I mean, that's farming too.
Yes.
Why would you struggle in farming year after year? Yes, it's a way of life, but it also gives meaning because you're supporting a population. So as a public scientist, that's what I believe. It's based on service. That is the core principle of a land-grant university. And I think our mission is to really make sure what we do, we contribute to society that provides an impact, that changes things, that solves problems. Yeah. Not just for today, but setting a platform for the next generation as well. So that's what I feel what a public scientist is. Yeah. I'm sure everybody has their own definition. This is just my flavor.
No, I love that. And that goes right back to what we were talking about is learning how to, communicate with the farmers and understand what their needs are. and make sure like that you're serving them, but also serving like by using your resources appropriately. Like Texas A&M has a ton of resources. Absolutely. And you need to like show for like that you're using those correctly. And good thing, like we were just talking about, there's so many different ways you can use those resources. What are some ways that you're generating interest around like the crops that you mentioned that are so like prominent in Texas? Like how are you generating interest around those?
Well, so the industry, so I think the way I would answer is, what is my role in doing that? How am I working with it? Well, so first of all, I'm researching those crops and again, trying to learn listening. You mentioned that earlier. I am going to the farms, working with the farmers and learning, because my colleagues are already serving their needs. They're doing in their capacities, and this is an amazing group of over 50 colleagues in research, extension, and teaching that we work with. Because those are the three missions of our land grant university. So they're already working with them. I am coming in new, trying to learn what can I contribute, both in terms of as a scientist, but also in terms of having this opportunity to represent and lead the department and advocate for my colleagues. Where are the opportunities? Where can we come together to serve their needs in partnership with them? So last 2 years plus, I've been on the farms. They've been very kind. Troy Swift, he's a pecan farmer. He allowed me to come to his farm and plant an orchard with him. We were doing some soil amendment trials, and it was kind of fun. I got to get my coveralls for the first time. So I have a new piece of wardrobe and mud boots, and I was worried I might faint.
You made her through.
Yeah, I made it through. Yeah. But that was a great experience. Similarly, we have Messina Huff Winery. We planted some wine grapes with them. And it's just their enthusiasm is what fuels my enthusiasm as well. And working together, we spent a whole day, for example, with Troy.
Yeah.
We were not just planting trees. There was a conversation, ongoing conversation. What are the needs? Then I go and work with the wine grape industry, and they say, well, similar needs, regenerative agriculture. We need to make sure our work goes on very well.
Yeah. And so I think like, okay, that reminds me of like, all right, I spent a lot of time with my dad, right? I'm riding around with him, and that's like how he says, you're going to be a better leader and be able to take over this place better because you're spending time with me and you're seeing me in action. And I think that's a prime example of what you're just talking about. And like what students need to be doing more of is like seeing these farmers and seeing these managers in action and seeing how they think. Because like that will help be more productive, like with research time and investment. And so you spent some time with like wineries and like grape production and stuff, and based on like discussion yesterday, it sounds like Texas does things a little differently when it comes to grapes. Like what are some examples of that?
Well, first of all, we are not just growing the main varietals that everybody wants to grow. I think it started there. Everybody wanted to have their Cab and Chardonnay. But very quickly we realized there are different challenges of weather, climate, soil-borne pathogens, and that, our industry is very entrepreneurial. They started bringing new varietals from abroad and Spain, similar regions. And now my colleagues, we have about 12 colleagues across the state who really support the wine grape industry, but also other industries as well. I mean, we have additional colleagues. So they're all trying to work on, the industry started showing us the way, but now we're starting to generate data through graduate students, through undergraduate research that then can provide them information. So the pioneers who brought some of the cultivars initially, the current generation or new people coming into the industry don't have to do that. But that goes true with, for example, we are trying a apple from one of my colleagues in Maryland. He's developed a apple cultivar that is low chill and may not require any rootstocks because it's already compact.
Wow.
So we are going to be doing some trials in 2-3 locations in colder areas, somewhat colder areas, so that we can really help our farmers diversify what they're doing. So and I brought some apple selections from Washington that I was working with my colleague Kate Evans.
Okay.
You know her,
yes.
the one who released Cosmic Crisp. So we're doing some cider apple trials. We have 2 locations up north in Texas.
Well, see, and I think that's exactly what horticulture is. Like right there is you're looking at what you're surrounded by, what your climate is, what sort of weather events you're dealing with, and you're finding the right crop or adapting a crop to fit that sort of surroundings. It's just like anything in life. It's like, don't try to be something you're not. Don't try to bring a Washington apple down here it's clearly not Washington here. You don't have like the chill hours that we do down here. So it's just a prime example of that. It's like horticulture is, not trying to just stick a puzzle piece in somewhere that doesn't fit. It's just creating its own puzzle piece to fit perfectly into that environment. And I think that's what's so cool about horticulture.
Yeah, I have two colleagues here. One is actually trying to identify an apricot that will grow very best over here, as well as another. We were just meeting with the Texas olive industry. They really would like to grow some olives. So that's where we are embarking on trying different types, different selections, different breeds from the world around, and see what fits here. But I think combining the trial piece, but also combining that knowledge. We were talking about bringing different bases of knowledge together. So utilizing the genetics piece, we're understanding that aspect as well. So we can be more predictable in these trials as well. I think that working across, my colleagues do the trials, for example, and my lab does the genetics piece. We can start combining these knowledge bases, already happening in case of other crops, like when I was in Washington. I think we're just extending that to additional horticultural crops to diversify, but also, as you know, in any business, diversification is key.
Oh, absolutely.
So you need to be able to grow different things, especially we don't have a uniform like an apple industry here, that sense, or pear industry, but I think there is a lot of uniqueness to this place.
Yes.
And to really align and support the entire Texas horticulture, we've kind of, as a department, we've kind of narrowed down to 3 key areas of mission that we have. We think about sustainability, wellness, and food security. And let me elaborate. Sustainability is not just, feel-good aspects, but it starts with economic viability. So the first aspect of sustainability is economic viability for us. Whatever we do, we're doing need-driven research, need-driven trials, whatever. And need does not mean that it only delivers in 5 years. We also, a biggest need is we need to be prepared for the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to really increase our knowledge base. So some of my colleagues do fundamental research, which may not see application today or in the next 5 years, but guess what? In 10 years, that might be the most critical thing that was needed. For example, Niels Bohr, when he split the atom, he was not thinking that 70% of today's GDP will be based on that technology.
Wow.
Obviously, you've heard of Edison.
Yes.
He did 10,000 experiments. It developed a bulb, right? That's what he wanted. He didn't care how it worked, what it worked. So these are 2 examples. And then there is the example of Louis Pasteur, who developed the fermentation and vaccines and antibiotics and everything. So he was focused on need-driven research. I think we, as a department, we were just had a strategic plan meeting right now recently. And we all kind of thought, forget this dichotomy of basic and applied research. Let's talk about need-driven research. If a farmer needs on-hands research on their farm, let's work that. And while another colleague wants to discover what is the fundamental mechanism of fire blight resistance, we need to do that as well.
Yeah.
So then to combine those aspects.
I totally agree. I just assimilate it to being a farmer. It's like, while, fertilizing is good, we could be busy fertilizing, but we need to be actually focused on, thinning our trees and stuff. They're both productive things, but it's like, what is the most productive thing for us right now? And I think that can come down to a lot of times research. It's like people have so much passion and you're like, oh, that looks cool and I want to learn more about that. But that's not going to be actually productive and beneficial, whether it's sustainability for the planet or sustainability for keeping an operation afloat, right?
Yes. And I have another very, very big part of sustainability.
Yeah.
Your generation, you guys. Without students, without people coming and getting trained in horticultural sciences or other disciplines that are supporting the industry, we cannot sustain this.
No.
And I think you being a farmer, a 4th generation farmer, we need more farmers too. And I know there are some projects ongoing in the country. In fact, WSU leads one of the AI project, AI, artificial intelligence related project, where it's called Ag Aid.
Oh.
It's to really develop a knowledge base of what are the farmers thinking when they're putting together a pear orchard. So we have all the tools in one place and decisions as well. While that is useful, it will take some time to mature. But idea is that we can encourage more farmers.
Yes.
To really, or bring more people, general public, to farming as well.
There's more tools available too. Yeah.
And then finally, of course, sustainability. We want to make sure we take care of our environment. That's the other big piece.
Absolutely.
Let's talk a little bit about wellness now. I know that whenever I think of wellness, people think about just one part, which is health, but physical health. And, with the whole health revolution going on, of course, if you don't believe me, look at the numbers when the New Year resolutions come. Everybody signs up for a gym. Well, I'm guilty of doing that too.
Me too.
So I think over there, we think both about physical and mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Physical, of course, nutrition is one part that we really, of course, pears are healthier.
Yep.
And so are pecans. So both are my passions now, because I worked with pears for quite a bit, and of course apples. But the idea is that we have some of these products that can really provide you so much nutrition that can also reverse the effect of diseases.
Yes.
I mean, one of my colleagues in my department recently published, Luis Cisneros published a study, which if we extrapolate to humans, he did the study in mice, but if we extend it to humans, it says it kind of proposes that 25 pecans a day, you can reverse the effect of diabetes and obesity. So it's called a metabolic disorder. So that's amazing. And I know with pears as well, similar studies have been done. Blueberries, I mean, I can go on and on with horticultural crops.
I think the biggest thing is we are so lucky to live in an age where we have access to all of these products. You can have blueberries and apples and squash, that are typically not all grown at the same time, right? Yeah. And we are so fortunate to have that complexity within our diet, and I think it's important to utilize that. My generation is we like their instant gratification, right? Yeah. So we will buy all the supplements in the world and all the nutrient powders and stuff, but there's nothing better than actually consuming that fresh produce or that horticultural product, because you're getting that macronutrient, or you're getting that certain vitamin that product is known for, but you're getting a multitude of other micronutrients that are helping your body to produce the best cells and be more you're being more disease resistant yourself.
Well, during COVID, we realized that a lot of people have started working with plants. They're natural de-stressors. And you talk to Professor Charlie Hall.
Yes.
He works in that space. How interacting with plants is very important. And when you do all of that, there's this community that you can build around horticulture. In fact, we've started a program called Spirited Learning, where we bring over 500 people from all over the campus, from all our Texas horticulture industries, to highlight horticulture. But we also bring them around. We celebrate a Texas winery every time. And I know this technique has been used thousands of years ago. Wine's been used to bring people together.
Of course.
But I think this is where we are trying to build a community, health. So that's wellness. And finally, food security. So let me ask you, what do you understand when I say food security?
Oh, gosh. I say food security. Being self-sustained as a country, honestly.
Well, I agree, and I think one of the biggest things we are trying to do is also be able to produce our food here. Yeah. Because I think as there's unrest going on, we need to be in times of such times. I mean, it disrupts a lot of things. We've seen COVID did that, so it's not just unrest. It could be any kind of natural issue.
Well, that's so true. I was just in Switzerland for 3 months, and Switzerland is big on anything Swiss is they like to consume that first. And I think America's lost a lot of that mentality of it's grown in America, we're proud of that, we want to consume that first. Instead, we have the mentality of whatever's cheapest, we're going to consume that first. I think we need to take a lot more pride in producing more of our own food and being more self-sustained, because that is one of the strongest aspects of a country. That's why, a lot of Europe, they have incredible growing regions too. And the food that they produce is great, but they have a limited resource in land. We are so fortunate to be in America where we have an abundance of land. We just need to make sure we're utilizing that the best. And that is where horticulture comes in, as far as, producing as many crops as we can and adapting those crops to those different growing regions, and also maximizing our land to suit those crops too.
Well, I would say food security is just food availability, but also the ability to produce it here. I know getting produce from all over the world supports the global economy, which is very important as well, where we can really connect with the world.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think the big piece is that we should have our own expertise as well. At the same time, we need to build those in parallel to keep the economic engine going. Going back to my initial, the sustainability, economic viability of and competitiveness of our farmers and everything.
I totally agree.
Well, Kate, it's great to start this Horticulture Innovators podcast with you, because you've truly, at your stage of your career, you've kind of you've become a pioneer, creating this mission-driven influencer platform. I would like to say you're a horticulture influencer.
I am a horticulture influencer now. From this day forward, I'm a horticulture influencer.
Well, please add that hashtag so that we can keep following you, not only following you on media, but following all the good you're doing to educate people where our food comes from, and also promoting healthy eating.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Gigam. We hope you enjoyed this episode of Horticultural Innovators. Subscribe if you want to learn more and spread the good word. Thanks, and Gigam.